Welcome to English 4E, Term 2A, Class 7. We're going to be looking at assignments K11 and K12 today, and we're going to be looking at adverbs, adjectives, and reviewing clauses. All right, as always, if you need to reach me, the easiest and best way is really email jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. You can also use Facebook, capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. If you want to look at old classes, they are on YouTube at, again, capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. When you're handing in your student work, send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. That way the secretary can log that you submitted the work. It also means if something ever happened to me and we had a new teacher, we would still have access to your work, right? If you send it to me directly, then that can be more tricky. Please include your full name, the course name, assignment name and number, and a rough and good draft. If you need to take a photograph of an assignment, please send it as an attachment rather than directly in the email body. And again, I don't know why it did this. I literally just signed in, so it should be all secure. But this is our daily thing. I apologize, friends. I have tried multiple different ways to solve this problem, but I'm not sure why. La la la. We'll be back to class soon. Technical difficulties. All right. And there we go. Okay. Today's work. Review adjectives, learn about comparative adjectives, learn about superlative adjectives, review what a main clause is, review what an independent clause is, identify main clauses in a sentence, identify subordinate clauses in a sentence, write a journal entry on a media format stating our opinion, support our opinion with evidence from the text or the source. Okay, so what is a main or independent clause? We talked about this lots yesterday. So here are our choices, a little mini quiz. A main clause is a subject and a verb, or a main clause expresses a complete thought, or a main clause starts with a capital letter and ends with a period, or a main clause has a subject, a verb, and expresses a complete thought. So A, B, C, or D, which one is correct? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. It is D. A main clause has a subject, a verb, and expresses a complete thought. Okay, so with that definition in mind, which of these sentences below are actually a main or independent clause? Remember that if they aren't, that would mean that they're a sentence fragment and you would need to fix them in your writing. So the snowflakes were lovely and fell gently. So first of all, can we find a subject? Sure, snowflakes. And what is our verb? We've got were and we also have fell. So there's a compound predicate there. And does it express a complete thought? Sure, it makes perfect sense. After I shovel the walk. All right. Is there a subject? I. Is there a verb? Shovel. After I shovel the walk, does it express a complete thought? No, because the moment you're saying after I shovel the walk, well, then something else is about to happen. What is that something else? So it's not a complete thought, it's a sentence fragment. The car couldn't get started in the cold. What is our subject? Car. What is our verb? Long one, couldn't get started. Does it express a complete thought? Absolutely. It stands all by itself. So it is a main clause or an independent clause. Because the engine froze up. Is there a subject? Engine. Is there a verb? Froze. Does it express a complete thought? No. Because the engine froze up, there should be a beginning of the sentence somewhere, right? That is kind of the end of a sentence. Something happened because the engine froze up. Maybe the car couldn't get started in the cold because the engine froze up. But by itself, it is not a complete sentence. He tried pouring hot water on the windshield. All right, what's our subject? He. What is our verb? Tried pouring. And is it a complete sentence? Yes, it can stand all by itself. I have a friend whose neighbor actually did this, by the way. If you've never seen it done, fair warning, don't do it. And we'll find out why in the next sentence. Shattered glass everywhere. All right, is that a complete sentence? Well, is there a subject? No, it's not. Is there a verb? Shattered, sure. Is it stand by itself? No, it's a sentence fragment. All right, so yeah, warning to the wise, in case you've never thought about it, glass does not like hot water. All right, another little mini quiz. What is a subordinate or a dependent clause? Here is our multiple choice answers. A clause that has a subject, but no verb. B, a clause that has a verb, but no subject. C, a clause that has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. Or D, a clause that has a subject and a verb and does not express a complete thought. All right, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Which is the right one? D, right? It has a subject and a verb. It has to, or it wouldn't be a clause, but it does not express a complete thought. So with that definition of mind, here we have some possible sentences, but some of these are dependent clauses or would be considered a sentence fragment. They're not complete on their own. Which one of these are dependent clauses? The beautiful gray leather seats in our car. All right, so is there a subject? Sure, the seats. Is there a verb? No, there's no verb. So right away, it's failed the test. It is not, well, it's not even a dependent clause. It's actually just a phrase, it's a fragment. The police car raced down the highway after the speeder. Okay, is there a subject? Sure, the police car. Is there a verb? Raced. And is it a dependent clause? No, it stands all by itself, right? The police car raced down the highway after the speeder. It's perfectly understandable. All right, we're scared waiting all that time for the mean guy to come back. Is there a subject? No, there is not. Is there a verb? Sure, we're scared waiting. Does it make sense? No, because it's missing the subject, so it can't be a clause for one thing. So you're not really sure what's happening. So that would be a sentence fragment. So pleasant under the big willow tree by the lake. Is this a dependent clause? Well, is there a subject? Nope. Is there a verb? No, there's not even a verb. So again, this one doesn't even count as a dependent clause because it's just not even a clause. It's just a little phrase. Even if I could come, is this a dependent clause? Is there a subject? I. Is there a verb? Could come? Sure. Is it a dependent clause? Yes. The even if means it would imply something more like, even if I could come, I don't have the money to be able to go to the movies or whatever. The posted speed was only 80 kilometers an hour. Oh, and I got a second backslash instead of a period there. Hang on. All right, fixed. Posted speed was only 80 kilometers an hour. Is that a dependent clause? Well, is there a subject? Sure, the speed. Is there a verb? Was. Does it stand on its own? Absolutely. That makes perfect sense by itself. So it's, again, not a dependent clause. There's not a lot of dependent clauses in here. They're a bit tricky, eh? Made my head spin. Is this a dependent clause? Well, is there a subject? Nope. Is there a verb? Sure, made, and then spin, I guess. Does it make sense by itself? No. So this one actually doesn't qualify as a dependent clause because it's not even a clause, right? If I said something like, although it made my head spin, now I've got a dependent clause because it's got a subject, it's got a verb, made, and it's dependent because of the subordinating conjunction. So I'm going to put that kind of here. Hint, look for the subordinate conjunction. Okay. When you see those, then it's a good hint that you've got a dependent clause there. If it's at the beginning of the sentence and it doesn't make sense on its own. So kind of the criteria. Okay. So these sentences are complex sentences, which if you remember means they all have a main clause and they have a subordinate clause. So they all have both. Okay, so let's look for the main clause and the subordinate clause. When my father arrives, he will give the directions. Okay, so if I'm trying to find the main clause, or I'm actually going to try the subordinate clause first because it's easier. And here's why. If you are looking for the subordinate clause, all you got to do is try and find the subordinate conjunction. And once you've got the subordinate conjunction, you know that little section is going to be the subordinate clause. So when I see that phrase when, that's a big hint that this part might be my subordinate clause. So let's take a look at it and see what we think. When my father arrives. Yeah, because father's your subject and there's your verb and there's your subordinate conjunction. So does that mean the rest of this is our main clause? Well, let's take a look at it. He will give the directions. Subject, verb, makes sense on its own. This part I'm just going to put in italics just because it's really easy to flip up and grab it. There we go. When my mother shows, okay, I'm going to say arrives. I think I was using shows a bit colloquially there. It sounds funny. Arrives, she will bring the food. All right, well, this one's kind of a gimme because we just tried the when, so we kind of know when my mother arrives is, again, our subordinate clause, and she will bring the food. Now, if you notice this, you begin to see after a while, there's a lot of patterns to English sentences, right? After a while, you begin to recognize the patterns, and then it becomes much easier to do writing and to do your editing and stuff because you begin to look for that pattern and whether you see it or not, right? While the flowers bloom, I will plant more trees. Okay, do you see that pattern? While the flowers bloom. While is a subordinate conjunction. And so that whole little phrase there before the comma, while the flowers bloom, is your subordinate clause. I will plant more trees. That becomes your main clause. Okay. And that part goes into italicized. 4, no matter how you look at it, we are in good hands. Okay. What part there is your subordinate clause? Haha, you're beginning to see the pattern. Sure, exactly. Right there at the beginning, no matter how you look at it. Now, I just noticed I'm so used to the pattern, I actually did them all this way. Very bad, Jill. All right, but it doesn't have to be. So I am going to deliberately close your eyes, pretend you don't see the next little bit here, guys. Um, oh, look over there. There's a bluebird. Did you notice it? It's gorgeous, isn't it? Yes, I love it too. Okay. Wait, did I fool you guys? Hang on a second. Let's see if we can get this fixed. All right. Okay. So I flipped this one around in our short span of attention. Okay. Do not try on the shoe unless you have the right size. Okay, this time, where is the subordinating conjunction? Unless is our subordinating conjunction, and there is our subordinate clause. I'm going to underline that there. Now, so that means this part, do not try on the shoe, is your main clause, because that could stand all by itself, right? The comma here. A lot of times we do put the comma there just because we're kind of used to it. Technically, though, if the subordinate clause comes second, you don't need the comma there. That is still considered an appropriately punctuated sentence just that way. Do not try on the shoe unless you have the right size, right? So for the next one, before the food gets cold, go sit at the table. All right, where is our subordinate conjunction? Well, before the food gets cold can't stand on its own. All right, so I'm going to underline that. That's our subordinate conjunction. And then we have go sit at the table. And I just noticed something that I wanted to talk about. Um, I've mentioned a few times in a lot of my classes, you can't connect two sentences using a comma. And I was just thinking, somebody looking at this might feel like I'm breaking that rule because I'm putting a comma in the middle. But what's connecting these two sentence parts is not just the comma, it's that subordinating conjunction. The tricky part is, unfortunately, the subordinate conjunction can come at the very beginning of the sentence instead of the middle of the sentence where it's more obvious. So if you weren't noticing that part, somebody reading this quickly might think, oh, but she did just join two sentences using a comma, but it's not. It's an independent clause with a dependent clause being joined by a comma. That's different. These two couldn't stand on their own. One could, but the other one couldn't. So you can't join two clauses that can stand on their own with a comma, but you can join a dependent clause to an independent clause with a comma. I wonder if that's kind of been some of the confusion because I know this is one of the ones that's been the hardest thing. Since I don't have any money, I will not buy anything. All right, where's our subordinate conjunction? Because that's our big clue. Since. So since I don't have any money, there's my subordinate clause. I will not buy anything. Okay. And that's going to become our main clause. All right. Until the sun sets, sit by the lake. Until the sun sets, that's our conditional part. And we're going to put that right there underlined. Sit by the lake. And part of this just has to do with speech. Again, talking about patterns, but speech patterns. Some people would give the condition first until the sun sets, sit by the lake, especially if then once the sun sets, then come and find me. But other people might tell the main clause first, sit by the lake until the sun sets. Generally, just people kind of have one way they prefer to say it or the other. Both are absolutely correct, though. Now, this one is bothering me now because I don't know about you guys, but in school, I was always taught you can't start a sentence with the word because. Now, I know the reason why they're saying that is because they don't want you to write with a sentence fragment. But having said that, I have the ghost of every teacher I ever had in my brain yelling at me for putting the word because first. So I'm going to fix that now so all the ghosts will go away. Here we go. I will walk to school because I can't wait for the bus. Okay, so now where is the subordinate clause? Because is our start, right? Because there's our subordinate conjunction, which starts the subordinate clause. All right, see how they kind of sound the same? All right, Miss Allen, you'll be proud of me. There you go. I will walk to school. And then that becomes our main clause. Last one. When the president arrives, he will give a speech. All right, where is our subordinate conjunction? When. That means that is the beginning of our subordinate clause, which we're going to underline. And he will give a speech. That becomes our main clause. The other thing I wanted you to notice too is see how these aren't very long. These are complex sentences, but they still aren't very long. If you notice that you have a lot of very long sentences, that might be a hint that you're doing run-on sentences. Take a look and go through, and maybe you need to shorten your sentences up. It's really easy to do it. I think run-on sentences are kind of how we naturally talk. And so it's really easy to do that. So that took a little bit longer than I thought. I'm gonna skip over our little quiz here. And if we have time, I'll come back to it at the end there, okay? So then adjectives. Um, I'm going over adjectives and adverbs because it asks us to include them in our upcoming assignment, and I wanted to make sure we still remembered them. And sometimes people mix them up. So an adjective, what does an adjective do in a sentence? What's its job? Basically, it just describes nouns or pronouns. And does it come in the sentence? Where does the word order come? Generally, it comes before a noun Or sometimes it will come after a verb if it is a state of being verb like is, am, was, were, where the adjective is being used to describe the subject, like the day was wet. So wet is the adjective describing day. Was is your state of being verb. So this Valentine's Day was the worst one I ever had. Apologies to my husband. It wasn't actually, that just was the theme for this one. Okay, adjectives. Well, um, I would say worst one. Worst is definitely one of your adjectives. And I would also say Valentine's Day. Valentine's is describing the day to me. It's what I would consider a purpose adjective. Some people might disagree and say Valentine's Day is the name or the noun of the holiday. And I think that would be valid too. And here you come up to one of the things in grammar, which is there's not always 100% right answer. Okay. It's very rare that I'm looking at your stuff that closely. I'm just looking for that it makes sense, but it does help to kind of discuss that some things are, I don't know, negotiable and ambiguous, maybe. The box of chocolates was small and tasted terrible. Okay, so what are our adjectives here? Small is describing the box of chocolates. How did it taste? It tasted terrible. So terrible is my other one. Um, you could say of chocolates is like an adjective phrase as well. Okay, I'm going to underline that because of chocolates is describing what kind of box you have. Okay, I wore my new sweater and looked cute and cuddly. Okay, so where are the adjectives in this sentence? New is describing the sweater, and then cute and cuddly is describing the eye, which sounds funny, but I don't know how else to put it. We watched a scary movie on the new couch. So scary is describing the type of movie we watched, and new is describing the type of couch. So I'm wanting to point out, you notice how adjectives don't just describe the subject, they can describe the objects in the sentence as well. Our takeout Chinese dinner was yummy egg rolls and some delicious fried rice. So this is one that has some ambiguity. Takeout would be an adjective. Chinese would also be an adjective, right? An origin adjective. And those are both describing our dinner. Yummy is describing our egg rolls. Now, hang on, egg rolls. Some people would say egg rolls is like a compound noun. Other people would say egg is describing the type of rolls. For this one, I'm going to leave it and look at delicious fried rice. So delicious is definitely an adjective. And in this case, I would say fried is definitely a purpose adjective describing the type of rice. Now, why am I doing that one and not the egg rolls? Because I don't know if egg rolls is really describing the rolls in the same sense. Like if I picture egg as an adjective, it's not going to be describing what I picture of egg rolls. Again, ambiguity. It's the heart of English for some reason. Unfortunately, the electric power went out in the middle of our new movie, which left us bored and irritated. So, where are our adjectives? Electric is describing the type of power. Went out in the middle of our new movie. New is describing the type of movie. And which left us bored and irritated. So, bored, this is one of those tricky. I would say that these are adjectives. Some might argue that they're verbs. But at the moment, I think they're acting as adjectives in this sentence. Okay. So one type of adjective we haven't discussed so far was comparative adjectives. As you can probably tell from the title, they are used to compare two items. Generally, they're used to compare differences between the two objects that they modify. Things like larger, smaller, faster, higher, more expensive, less expensive. And they're used in sentences where two nouns are compared. And here is the pattern. Remember, we talked about patterns? So noun plus verb plus the comparative adjective, than, and then the other noun that you're comparing to. So the second item of comparison can be omitted if it's clear from the context. So here's an example. Bears are scarier than dogs. Bears is our noun, are is the verb, scarier is our comparative adjective, than dogs. Now, in this case, we use dogs because it's needed. It's not clear from the context. Here are some more examples. This Christmas tree is taller than the one we had last year. So taller is our comparative adjective. Snakes are a lot longer than worms. Longer is our comparative adjective. Our new cat is a lot older than our other cats. Older is our comparative adjective. This house is in much worse condition than the last one we saw. Now here, I would say much worse are acting together as a comparative adjective, okay? The music teacher is nicer than the gym teacher. Nicer is our comparative adjective. Our son is much happier at his new school than he was at his old school. Much happier is our comparative adjective. Okay. So here's a little video where the family is talking back and forth, and they're using a lot of comparative adjectives in order to discuss their choices for where they're going to go for vacation. And I thought this was a great little video, just kind of showing how it sounds in everyday speech.
Okay, so we have 3 options for our vacation this summer. We can go to a beach resort, to the Pandaland amusement park, or we can go camping at the lake. What do you think? We need to make a decision today.
I want to go to Pandaland. It's more exciting than a boring old beach or camping.
Well, honey, Pandaland is more expensive than the other two.
And it will be more crowded. A nice camping trip at the lake will be much quieter. Camping? I want to go to the beach resort. The hotel will be nicer, and the pool will be so much cleaner than a smelly lake.
Camping would be cheaper, but the hotel beds would be more comfortable than sleeping bags.
True, but the resort will be hotter, busier, and less interesting. Who wants to sit in the sun by a pool all day?
I do. If you want a more interesting vacation, they have jet skis, scuba diving, and, ocean fishing trips.
Now that you mention it, I've always wanted to go scuba diving. And fishing in the ocean sounds more exciting than in a lake. Okay, I'm convinced.
I'm not. I want to go to Pandaland. It's closer than the other two, so we will get there faster.
You know the resort has a water slide, right?
It does?
And a huge playground. Bigger and better than any playground you've ever seen.
Really? I'm more interested than I was before. Can I jump on the hotel bed?
We'll see, honey. Maybe, if it's stronger than your bed that you broke last month.
What do you think, kiddo? We can go to Pandaland next year.
You promise? Okay, the resort sounds more fun than camping, that's for sure.
Great. We all agree. Now we have to decide.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it there because I think you get the idea. So we use comparative adjectives all the time in speech. We just don't always notice them because they're not in the typical place, because they're usually between the two nouns that we're comparing. So I just wanted you to kind of have a heads up for that. The other thing that goes along with comparative adjectives is superlative adjectives. And superlative adjectives are used to describe an object which is at the upper or the lower limit of a quality. The tallest, the fastest, the smallest, the highest, the most expensive, the least expensive. And they're used in sentences where a subject is compared to a group of objects, or like more than two, three or four, could be a whole lot more. And again, you're going to follow this pattern. Normally, the noun plus the verb plus the superlative adjective plus the other noun that you're comparing it to. And again, the last noun can be omitted if it's clear from the context. This turkey dinner was the most delicious meal I have ever eaten. So turkey dinner is your noun, was is your verb, the most delicious is your superlative adjective, and then meal I've ever eaten. Okay, let me see. Here are some examples. My house is the largest one in our neighborhood. That is the fattest mouse I've ever seen. This is the smallest box I've ever seen. Your dog ran the fastest of any dog in the race. The new skyscraper is the tallest in the city. We all threw our rocks at the same time. My rock flew the highest. Now, they're pointing this out. Of all the other rocks is understood. And here, the nouns are split up between two sentences. That is still valid. The other part is kind of implied. You have to be kind of aware of it. It's not a typical way to say it, but it's not wrong. Okay. All right. Oh, hang on. What happened there? All right. We are also going to have to talk about adverbs, which we've discussed quite a bit. We're going to quickly go over here and just look at adverbs really quickly. Remember that they can describe a verb, an adjective, and verb, adjective, and another adverb. Okay, so the waiter patiently took our order. Patiently is describing the word took. The cat swiftly caught the mouse under his paws. Swiftly is describing the word caught. Jenna rides her bicycle well. Well is describing how she rides. It is snowing outside, so we need to dress warmly. Warmly is describing how you're going to dress. Michael completed his homework carefully. Carefully is describing how you completed it. The phone rings constantly at the office. Constantly is describing the ringing. Pet the kitchen, sorry, not the kitchen. Pet the kitten softly if you want it to purr. Softly is describing how you're going to pet. Maria practices her piano regularly. Regularly is describing how they're practicing. The painter delicately adds the final touch to his art. Delicately is describing the adding. Gina nervously twirls her hair. Nervously is describing how she's twirling. The cook gracefully spun the pizza dough in the air. Gracefully describes spun. I worked at a pizza joint. I have to be honest, I never once saw anybody spinning pizza dough in the air, although it looks beautiful in commercials. Okay, here is key question number 11. And it's called sentence construction. It is worth 10 marks. They want you to write 5 sentences of your own that will include both a main clause and a subordinate clause. Try to include some adjectives and some adverbs in your sentence to make them even more interesting. Okay, so those are the things I'll be looking for. It has to have a main clause and a subordinate clause, should include some adjectives and some adverbs. Okay, on to our next one. So this one, I'm going to kind of give you the question first, and then we're going to talk about how to do it. Key question number 12 is journal writing, and it is worth another 10 marks. In approximately 1/2 of a page of writing, describe your favorite television program or a favorite book that you've read. These are both forms of media. Note, some other media sources that would be acceptable would be things like Disney Plus, Netflix, Paramount. Sources like TikTok or YouTube, where it's kind of homemade videos, they aren't going to quite qualify for this, okay? In your paragraphs, comment on the title of the TV program or the book and give reasons why you consider it your favorite. Would you recommend it to others? And if so, why? So, and also if you wouldn't, if you thought it was terrible and why you wouldn't, you would give that too. But if you're saying it's your favorite, you probably would recommend it to others, right? Include at least one sentence that contains both a main clause and a subordinate clause and underline that sentence so that I can see that you know that it's there. By all means, use more than one, but please make sure there is at least one. That's one of the things we're practicing right now, right? Oh, hang on a second. Sorry. There we go. Okay, I'm going to explain the detail in a little more assignment in a little more detail. Generally, a half page of writing is looking at anywhere from 7 to 13 sentences, depending on how long you write, right? Some people write very long sentences, in which case 7 might do it. Some people write much shorter sentences, so 13 or 15. Don't worry about the number of sentences. I'm just kind of giving you an example. Please, 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 though, do not hand me a page with 2 sentences and consider that acceptable. I will just write, please redo. I won't even mark it if it's that short, okay? Tell me the title of your TV show or book. And please be sure that this is a complete sentence. So you can't just write Game of Thrones. That's not a complete sentence. You would have to say, my favorite TV show is Game of Thrones. That is a complete sentence. I know it sounds weirdly formal, right? Because it's not how we talk, but writing is a whole different way of communication. And we got to kind of follow the rules of writing, which is a little bit different than the rules of talking. Make sure you put the title of your show or your book inside quotation marks. See how I've got an opening quotation and then a closing quotation? That helps me understand that that's the name of your TV show, especially if you've got like an unusual TV show. I might not recognize it, right? And this is kind of the standard in writing that you put the quotation marks around it. Okay. Why is this show or book your favorite? Sometimes this is kind of hard to explain. Like a lot of times we like a show, we've never really thought about what we like about it. We just enjoy it. So this can be a little bit tricky at first if you've never really tried to explain it to anybody else. So you're going to need to explain this part with some details. So you can't just say, I like Big Bang Theory because I think it's funny. You could start with that, but then you would need to add some details like what makes it funny? Why do you think it's funny? What are some examples of times you thought they were funny? Funny events or funny statements? What are some things in general that we might like about a TV show or a book? Right? There's a lot of different elements to a TV show or a book, and any one of them might be the things that are most important to us. Not everybody's looking for the same thing, right? Some people like certain genres. For example, they always are watching comedies or mysteries, horror, shows that are very realistic or that have superheroes, romances or documentaries. You might like the characters, either their looks or their dialogue, the way they talk, their relationships, their families, their actions, their personalities, their heritage, whatever. The setting. Sometimes people love shows that are set in the past or in the present or shows that are set in the future, like Star Wars or something. Some people love shows that are imaginary, set in places that don't exist, like Game of Thrones. Some people want shows that are real, like something set in, Los Angeles, NCIS, that's a real city. Some people like shows that are based in the country. Some people like shows that are in big cities. Some people like shows that are all about foreign countries or all about work versus home life versus school life. Sometimes the setting can be a really important part of why we like a show. The acting or specific actors or specific book characters. So, like maybe you watch every TV show that has Henry Cavill. I'm saying that right? I'm not sure. Or maybe you love like strong female heroines, and you're always looking for great shows that have that, right? Um, Themes or messages of the show. There are certain shows I won't watch because I think they're depressing and they're just kind of like, oh, evil always wins. And that depresses me. So I won't watch those shows. Certain themes can really draw us. Love heals everything. Family comes first. Good wins against evil. Adventure is valuable. Now, if sometimes the theme might be, oh, the world is very depressing and there's no hope, and maybe that is the theme that draws you, and that's okay, right? We don't have to agree on this. I don't have to agree with your reasons. I don't have to like the same shows you do. That's all okay. I'm just looking for, can you explain your reasons why in a really good manner? I'm looking at your writing. I'm not looking to see if we agree with each other or disagree. Okay. So here is my brainstorming. Here's an example of what I would do if I was getting ready to write this assignment. Okay. We haven't really talked about writing process yet because we've been really working on the smaller end, the grammar part, but it's such a crucial part of writing that I think we kind of need to include it right away. Um, this part is not the part that you would hand in to me. This is just the part where you'd make little notes to yourself so you have an idea of what to write. Um, it doesn't have to be in complete sentences. It doesn't need to worry about being neat or being spelled correctly. It's just the ideas for you to kind of get your writing juices going so you got an idea what to say. So my favorite show is Criminal Minds. I watch that a lot. Why? I love police procedurals. I love the character Penelope and her dialogue with Derek. And I know that may not make sense to you if you don't watch the show, but remember, this is my note for myself to remember what to talk about. I enjoy the character Reed being the geeky genius. I like that there's sympathy, but also consequences for the bad guys. I like that there's a real presentation of shades of gray. Even though they're kind of fighting serial killers a lot of the time, they still never portray most people as being purely evil or purely good. I love the overall message. I love that they um, always try to talk about evil being worth fighting, even when you don't win. And not just the evil of other people, but evil in yourself, right? Hatred, meanness, that kind of thing. And the idea that comes across over and over in every show is how kindness and love helps to create healthy and mentally stable human beings. So those are some of the reasons why I enjoy that show. Now, that isn't my rough draft. That's just my ideas that I can now turn into my rough draft. Okay, so here are my ideas down here by the side. I'm going to kind of just dump it into yellow so you can kind of see it real quick. There we go. And then over here, maybe I'll put that in a light green just so you can see, is my ideas for a rough draft, okay? Remember, oh, wait, hang on a second. Did I put that? Okay, hang on before I get going. Remember paragraph format, okay? You have a topic sentence and it introduces your topic or opinion. So I love, or Criminal Minds is my favorite show, and you'd put whatever yours is. Then I'm going to describe my details. Now I've got 3 details listed here because that's the minimum that you would do. But if you're writing half a page of writing, you might have 5 details or 7 details. And a detail could be more than one sentence, right? Maybe it takes me a couple sentences to explain why I like the character Reed or why I like the importance of the message that it's important to fight evil. After you've got all your reasons listed, then you would do a closing sentence. And these kind of things, they're almost like street signs. The topic sentence is pointing to all your ideas and telling the reader, hey, here's where we're going. And then that closing sentence is kind of telling the readers, okay, I'm getting ready to finish up now. It's time to come out of this argument here. Okay. So you want to keep that in mind. All right. So Criminal Minds is my favorite show. There's my opening sentence. I could make that longer. I'm just kind of starting with a very simple one. If I was revising, I probably would make it a little bit longer. I'm just going to underline it so you can see it. And then down here at the bottom, I'll come to that. I'll do the go through bit by bit. For one thing, I love to watch police procedural shows. The format of starting off with an unsolved mystery while the detectives follow different clues is just very compelling to me. I like the characters in the show, at least most of them. Reed, as the young geeky genius with a head full of facts but little social sense, is hilarious to watch. My personal favorite character is Penelope, the computer hacking girl wonder who can sift through reams of data to find the answers they need. And I'm adding the word character there. She is wacky and wonderful, and her banter with the handsome detective Derek makes her fun to watch. I also appreciate the fact that although they have sympathy for the bad guys, that doesn't stop them from putting them in jail or even killing them if need be. They don't portray people as 100% good or evil. We are all a mixture of both. Finally, the message they send every week is that love is crucial to our health and evil is worth fighting. Those messages are ones I agree with wholeheartedly. So here, I'm going to say these two sentences are kind of working together to act as my closing sentence. And I was worried that that might bother some people. If I wanted to make it one sentence, if I wanted to be really, really by the book, I could fix it this way. Watch. If I turn that period into a semicolon and then turn the capital T into a lowercase t, I have now turned it into one sort of, not quite a complex sentence, but a joined sentence, I guess, by joining them with the semicolon. So it's a longer closing sentence, but that is a one valid way to do this. Okay. Anytime you write, you have to go back and look it over. And I know that is like the least favorite part for some people because it feels like you're having to find all your own mistakes. But that's okay because everybody makes mistakes in writing, no matter what, right? Writing is a complex task. There's just so many parts to it. So even when I'm writing, I go back and revise things multiple times before it meets my criteria. And I'm sure someone else who's a better writer would go back and revise it some more, and that's fine. So the one thing you want to do always, whenever you're doing any kind of writing for school, is go back and make sure that you met your assignment criteria. Is it at least 1/2 page long? Did I explain why the show or the book is your favorite? Would you recommend it to others? If so, why? So I don't know if I explained, I don't think I did that part. Did I include a sentence with a main clause and an independent clause? I'm not sure. I would need to check that. Did I follow good paragraph structure with an opening sentence, a body sentence, and closing sentences? Yes, I did do that part. So after looking this over, I realized I kind of forgot to say whether I'd recommend it to others. So I'm going to add that part back in. And I also forgot to check and make sure I included a sentence with a main clause and an independent clause. So I'm going to quickly, before I do anything, remember, here are my subordinate conjunctions. If I'm going to create a subordinate clause, it's going to start with, doesn't have to be one of these, there are more than this, but these are very, very common ones that people do commonly use. So this might be a good way to get my ideas going if I'm not sure. So I'm going to take a look at it. Okay. So after reading this over, first of all, I added in the part about the recommendation. I would recommend Criminal Minds to anyone who enjoys a good mystery and doesn't mind a bit of gore and some graphic scenes of violence. However, it may not be the best show for you if watching serial killers makes you a bit jumpy at being in the house alone. And in a way, this kind of now becomes my closing sentence. I'm okay with that. It wouldn't be how I would plan it, but it's okay. So I looked this over and I realized I have some longer sentences, but none of them really qualify as having a main clause plus a dependent clause. So I'm going to have to write one specially for that. So if I look this over, what I did was I looked for spots where there were shorter sentences that I could combine. Rather than writing a whole new sentence and just sticking it in there like a raisin in a loaf, I tried to gently combine ones that were already there. So here's an example. Criminal Minds is my favorite show because I love to watch police procedural shows. So now rather than two short sentences, I've joined them with the subordinate conjunction because. And down here, I kind of crossed this off and rewrote it basically. Even though they have sympathy for the trauma that has corrupted the serial killers, that doesn't stop the detectives from capturing or killing them if needed. So this part that starts with even though, that's my subordinate clause, and here is my main clause. And then down here, I combined two more sentences. I would recommend Criminal Minds to anyone who enjoys a good mystery, as long as you don't mind a bit of gore and some graphic scenes of violence. I'm going to fix that part. As long as is my subordinate conjunction. Doesn't roll off the tongue easily. There we go. Just fixing that because it looked like you was part of this subordinate conjunction and it's not. I've underlined those just like the assignment asks. I wouldn't generally hand it in this way. I would kind of clean it up. I've left the colors in there so you guys can kind of see the differences that I've made. Where's my time? Oh, I am just about running out of this. Yeah, we talked about that a lot. Okay. You do not have to use a TV show. You are welcome to use a book. You would just follow the exact same process. So here is the brainstorming process for the book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Here are a bunch of my reasons for why I like that book. And then same thing, I would take those brainstorming reasons and I would start to turn it into a rough copy for why I like that book. Then again, I would go through what I would advise. Check if it makes sense. Do I have incomplete sentences? Do I have run-in sentences? Can I polish up the word choices? Should I add some examples? Should I add some details? Does it meet the assignment criteria? And I'm saying this because I notice sometimes the thing that's coming up a lot is people have written a beautiful piece of writing, but it doesn't actually answer what the assignment was asking. And I always feel really bad when that happens because I'm sure it's frustrating as a student to have made that issue. So always check after you do the writing before you hand it in. And does this really answer what it asked? Sometimes when we get writing, we can get it off kind of on tangent and end up answering something that isn't quite what they asked. So keep that in mind as you're doing your work. So today is Thursday. I will be putting one more class out this week because we missed the Monday. And that will probably be just on the YouTube, okay? Thank you so much for coming out. If you need any help, by all means, send me an email. I'd be happy to talk to you and help you with any problems you're having with your work, okay? Thanks, and I will talk to you guys later.